right, we are live on YouTube and I'll start broadcasting.
Okay.
And we're live in the webinar.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. As you start joining us this morning, if you could please introduce yourselves in the chat and make sure your settings is to all panelists and attendees. Good morning to everybody who's joining us. If you could go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat, make sure you select all panelists and attendees. We'll be beginning promptly at 9:30. Hi, everyone who's joining us. Please introduce yourself in the chat. Select all panelists and attendees. We're going to get started in about a minute. Good morning. I think we'll go ahead and get started promptly. It is 9:30. Welcome to our webinar this morning. I would like to go ahead and introduce our presenter for today. Her name is Lisa Berghoff, and she's Director of Instructional Technology at Highland Park High School, and she'll be presenting today for us EdTech UDL mashup. We're going to get lots of great ideas because I've seen what's coming your way. It's really exciting. So I'd like to go over a few announcements. before we start. So just as a reminder, a recording of this event will be available to you afterwards at the link, and Brian will be sending this out to us today. And captions will be available in the recording. Live captions are available at the bit.ly address, and Brian will drop that link in the chat. Just to let you know, your video and audio are automatically turned off today, and that's because we have a large group attending. So if you do have questions, please drop those in the Q&A box, and we'll be stopping a couple times along the way during this hour and have Lisa answer our questions for us. You can also communicate in the chat as well. And I think I forgot to introduce Brian and I. I am Stephanie Eichley Chang. I work in the College of Education, working with credential candidates, and Brian is our communications coordinator for the College of Education here at San Jose State. And we'd like to welcome you this morning, and I'm going to turn it over to Lisa now so she can get started.
Thanks, Stephanie. Hi, everyone. Let's see, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you all. Okay, so welcome. Thanks so much for joining me this morning. It's great to see all of you here in the chat and kind of get to know a little bit about what you do and where you work. If you are just joining, feel free to say hello in the chat and tell us a little bit about you. I have QR code. So if you have a phone or a tablet or another device handy, you might want to have that out. I'll have this up at the end also, but this is a QR code to access these slides if you would like to refer to them later. And this will also obviously be in the recording as well. So a little bit about me. This is my 25th year in education. 20 of those years have been working with students with disabilities. The last 5 years, I am the Director of Instructional Technology at Highland Park High School, which is about 20 miles north of Chicago. And we actually have a rare, beautiful spring-like day today. So channeling a little bit of that California sun. So a lot of people think that it's kind of an odd transition to go from special education to instructional technology. But I will tell you that as a special education teacher, I have always been someone who would try just about anything if it meant helping my students learn. And so when technology in the classroom became a thing, the tech office at my school would just start to throw every new thing in my room because they knew that I would really give it a good, solid test run. And so I was the first to get a cart of Chromebooks. I had iPads, I had a Promethean board. And then when Google for Education came out and Google Docs and it all just kind of came at this huge flood at once. And I learned really quickly that for many of my students, utilizing a lot of this technology really did make a difference for them. And so that kind of sent me down this rabbit hole of certifications through Google. I became certified through their level 1, level 2, and then I became a trainer. And then I was accepted into their innovator program back in 2017. Last summer, I was a coach for their London cohort. So the transition from special education to instructional technology actually, to me, makes perfect sense because in the work that I do with students and with educators, it's always through the lens of who are our struggling learners and how can we help them? So I'm not really interested in using technology just because it's shiny and flashy and new, but it really has to help students learn. So in my personal life, I'm not really a super techno geek. I don't have the newest, latest thing. I really feel like I'm a little bit of a skeptic at first. And it's like, okay, if this is going to be amazing in my classroom, I have to see it. I also have some photos up here of my family. I will tell you that I am the only one in my house who has not been diagnosed with some sort of disability. And for sure, my dog included has ADHD. He's a handful. And you can see from the image in the lower right-hand corner, my husband really pushed me out of my comfort zone a couple of years ago and got me to do a Tough Mudder with him. So I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's a very long obstacle course race type of an event. And you can see from the photo that he loved every second of it and me not so much. But it's one of those things where I got pushed out of my comfort zone. I learned so much, and I really felt like a huge accomplishment when it was over. And that's the feeling that I really hope my students have. So this is a picture that I took in my school back in the fall, back when we were in school. And I work in a high school. And one of the things that I absolutely love about being in a high school is this. Like, you just never know what you're gonna see walking down the hall. So this was a random student dressed up in a cap and gown. I have no idea what is on his head. He's holding up a sign. They were filming some sort of video. But this is the type of thing that just kind of like gets me up and keeps me going every day for 25 years. And just that sense of like, you walk down the halls and you just never know what you're going to find. So we have all kinds in our school. Okay, so really quickly, I'm going to be talking a little bit in the beginning of the hour about universal design for learning. So it helps me if I can kind of get a sense of what your current level of knowledge is. So if you can go ahead and just put in the chat, give me a number. So where are you in your knowledge of universal design for learning? 1 would be like, maybe never heard of it before, or heard of it but have no idea. And 5 would be like, you could present this alongside me. So go ahead and post in the chat kind of where you are with your knowledge of UDL. I'll give you a quick minute to do that. Okay, so I'm going to take a look at that. Let's just get some baseline information. We're going to watch a short video from CAST, which is the organization that created Universal Design for Learning. So let's take a look.
So let's say you're a teacher who needs to reach a curriculum goal, and you've got a diverse group of students. Well, so does this teacher. And this one. Most do. In fact, research shows that the way people learn is as unique as their fingerprints. What does this mean for teachers today? Classrooms are highly diverse, and curriculum needs to be designed from the start to meet this diversity. Universal Design for Learning is an approach to curriculum that minimizes barriers and maximizes learning for all students. For a better understanding, let's unpack the term Universal Design for Learning. First is the word universal. By universal, we mean curriculum that can be used and understood by everyone. Each learner in the classroom brings his or her own background, strengths, needs, and interests. Curriculum should provide genuine learning opportunities for each and every student. Now let's think of the word learning. Learning is not one thing. Neuroscience tells us that our brains have 3 broad networks. One for recognition, the what of learning. One for skills and strategies, the how of learning. One for caring and prioritizing, the why of learning. Students need to gain knowledge, skills, and enthusiasm for learning, and a curriculum needs to help them do all 3. But every learner is unique, and one size does not fit all. So how do we make a curriculum that challenges and engages diverse learners? This is where the word design comes in. A universally designed building is planned to be flexible and accommodate for all kinds of users with and without disabilities. It turns out that if you design for those in the margins, your building turns out better for everyone. Curb cuts and ramps are used by people in wheelchairs, people with strollers, and people on bikes. Captioning on TV serves people who are deaf, people learning English, people in gyms, and spouses who get to sleep at different times. UDL takes this idea and applies it to the design of flexible curriculum. UDL goes beyond access because we need to build in support and challenge. So how do we use the UDL framework to make learning goals, methods, materials, and assessments that work for everyone? First, ask yourself, what is my goal? What do I want my students to know, do, and care about? Then ask, what barriers in the classroom might interfere with my diverse students' ability to reach these goals? To eliminate the barriers, use these 3 UDL principles to create flexible paths to learning so that each student can progress. Number 1, provide multiple means of representation. Present content and information in multiple media, and provide varied supports. Use graphics and animation, highlight the critical features, activate background knowledge, and support vocabulary so students acquire the knowledge being taught. Number 2, provide multiple means for action and expression. Give students plenty of options for expressing what they know, and provide models, feedback, and supports for their different levels of proficiency. Number 3, provide multiple means of engagement. What fires up one student won't fire up another. Give students choices to fuel their interest and autonomy. Help them risk mistakes and learn from them. If they love learning, they'll persist through challenges. And remember, always keep in mind the learning goal. Get rid of barriers caused by the curriculum and instead keep the challenge where it belongs. And that's it. Okay, quick recap. Show the information in different ways, allow your students to approach learning tasks and demonstrate what they learn in different ways, and offer options that engage students and keep their interest. Universal design for learning equals learning opportunities for all. For more information about UDL, go to www.cast.org.
Okay, so hopefully for those of you who were a 1 or a 2 in your UDL knowledge, that it's helpful for you to have that kind of baseline. So think about your students, or for those of you who are preparing to be teachers, your soon-to-be students, and think about, or even jot down on a piece of paper really quickly, what are the different areas where their learning could vary? So think about a classroom of students that you have taught or that you have observed, and all the different ways that they could vary. So most people think of reading level or math scores, or even executive functioning. But what about things like tolerance for frustration, curiosity, background knowledge, ability to attend, students' interest, language? So there are so many different ways that learners can vary in how they learn. In my school, for our incoming students, when they graduate from 8th grade and come to the high school, we have our math teachers give an assessment, an initial assessment to kind of see where their skills are. They look at the students' grades and their test scores, but then they also ask the 8th grade teachers to give each student what's called a grit score. And they're really interested to see things like, how do they handle frustration? How do they manage when they can't figure something out? So there are lots of different ways that we can vary in our learning. So I love this image because it really shows very clearly the typical kind of special education model, right? So we have 3 people here, assuming they're kids, trying to watch a ball game, and one of them is very short and just cannot see. So what do? We give them a boost, right? We give them an extra box. There you go. Now you can see. And that's very similar to what we do in the classroom. So when we see that a student has a deficit, we do something to kind of help build them up, to give them that extra boost. However, in Universal Design for Learning, the thought process is a little bit different. It's more about removing barriers and reimagining the fence. So instead of saying, okay, you have a problem, you're too short, we're going to give you this extra box to stand on, they say, hey, let's just change the fence. And that will actually help more people in many more ways, right? So in the middle image, we're giving a box for that one student, that one child, helping that one person. But in changing the fence completely, you're helping many more people in ways that you don't even know yet. So that is kind of the mindset behind Universal Design for Learning. It's about removing barriers. So this is how I like to think about and remember the frameworks in UDL. The affective framework has to do with the why of learning. So picturing those students who are like, oh, when am I ever going to need to know this? Why do I have to learn this? Who cares? Or those kids who just can't self-regulate. They can't get it together enough to figure out how to access the information. So that's the affective network of your brain. The recognition network has to do with how we take in information. So those are our students who we might hear them say things like, I'm confused, I don't understand. So finding ways for them to get information, take in information in new ways. And then the strategic network is the how of learning. So it's those kids who consistently are bombing our assessments and our exams, struggling with those summative assessments. The strategic network really deals with how our students show what they know and what they've learned. So Universal Design for Learning has these guidelines set up, and it really does a nice job of explaining and walking us as educators through each of these pieces. And even though I've been doing this for years, I refer to the UDL guidelines constantly. So down at the bottom here, they give us just some little tips for how to tap into those different networks of the brain. So for the affective network, stimulating interest and motivation. That's going to look different for a lot of different students. Presenting information and content in different ways for the recognition network. So, when I think about what my school experience was like, it was pretty much a teacher doing a lot of talking. And then when the teacher stopped talking, we did a lot of reading. And there wasn't much variation in how information was presented. And then there's the strategic network. We're looking for changing up the ways that students can show us what they know. So maybe a test is one option, but there could be lots of other ways for students to show their understanding. So the UDL guidelines are really a matrix. So across the top, we have the 3 networks, and then along the side, we have 3 different levels. So we're looking at the access level, the build level, and the internalized level. And I don't pay a ton of attention to these levels, but I do often look back at the goal, which talks about having students that are purposeful and motivated, resourceful and knowledgeable. They're strategic and goal oriented. Basically, they're like pretty independent learners. And again, that goes against kind of my traditional schooling with regards to special education, because it was really about, you have a deficit, how do we help you compensate for that deficit? And this really talks about teaching kids how to learn. Notice that in the goal, they don't mention a specific content. It's not about reading level. It's not about math skills. So when you look at these guidelines, really understanding that there are lots of different levels, and you're building to get there. So what does this actually look like in the classroom? This is kind of a point where when I'm talking with educators about this, they say, oh yeah, this all makes perfect sense. I'm with you. But then I have this class full of students. What does this actually look like in my classroom? Or these days, even more of a challenge, what does this look like when I'm trying to teach students remotely? So I really love this graphic because it shows the recursive nature of utilizing universal design for learning in the classroom. And at the top of this, this circle here is, you have to know your students. Who are the people? So regardless of all of your knowledge and education, if you don't have a way to really get to know your students well, then you're going to struggle. So knowing your students is definitely priority 1. And that's a big challenge in this remote environment. And we have to get creative. So knowing your students, and then also knowing what your goal is and being able to articulate your goal. And then you look for potential barriers. So what would be the fence for your various students in matching what you know about them to your goals for them? And then we look for supports. So how can we reimagine that fence? How can we remove barriers by providing them lots of supports and using the UDL guidelines, which we're going to look at in a second, and then try it, get feedback, talk to your students. How did this go? And then you start all over again. So it's in this kind of circular nature. I'm just going to pause here for a quick minute and see, Stephanie, if we have any questions in the chat right now, or if I should keep going.
Lisa, I think you can keep going. I think this is very clear. So thank you for the great graphics.
Sure.
Lisa, I do have one question before we continue on. I was wondering if you could try full screening your slides.
Yeah.
Only because sometimes there's some text at the bottom that gets cut off. I think that'll be good. Yeah, cool. Thank you.
I thought of that in the middle and I didn't want to futz with it while I was talking. So thank you for giving me the chance to do that. Okay. So I'm not allowed to show you video or pictures of my students, but this was kind of the best analogy that I could think of. So humor me for a moment. And then I promise we will get to the tech. So I don't know how familiar you are with agility dogs, but this is Sunday. So let's just watch.
All right, next up in the small dog agility competition, this is Angie Bequisto again and her dog Sunday, the 2-year-old mixed breed female. An excellent first round time of 33.27. Perfect run, 0 faults on that first round. We'll see if they can speed it up and improve upon that here in run 2. Looking great so far, nailing the weave pole section. Excellent there. Section 2 of the weave poles. They hit that, through the tunnel they go. Wow, super quick. By Sunday, they'll compete for the USA at the European Agility Championships in July this summer. But look at this, in their first ever Purina Pro Plan Incredible Dog Challenge, run number 2 also clean. This one 32.07, and they are the Eastern Regional Champions and will head to the National Championship Finals.
Okay, so think about what the trainer had to do to train that dog to get to do that. And now meet Zeus, also an agility dog. So think about who are your Sundays, who are your Zeuses. What did those trainers have to do differently for each of those dogs? And did they both succeed? Sure, Zeus went a lot slower, but technically did every element correctly. So when we think about, as educators, what counts as success? What are our measures of success? And thinking about removing barriers for our students. Think about in your classroom, who are your Sundays and who are your Zeuses and everyone in between. And keeping in mind that universal design really began through architecture. And so we're adding on the learning piece, but it's that idea that when you design for the edges, when you put in a ramp instead of stairs, it's designed for perhaps people with mobility issues, but people pushing strollers, people on skateboards, people who can walk, but maybe stairs are difficult, are all going to benefit. So as you are designing lessons and learning activities for your students, keep those things in mind. I think we often plan for the middle, and what we really need to do is design for the edges. Okay, so this is what the UDL guidelines look like. And I really like this template that they give because it gives you a chance to write in your own ideas for what will work in your classroom. You can also use theirs, and they give very clear and specific ways to make this work for students. So if you are looking at the guidelines and you're looking at means of engagement, you're looking at that affective network, it will give you a really nice overview of what that means really specifically. And then within that, it gives you checkpoints and really specific things that you can do in your classroom. So you don't need to go at this alone, and you don't need to just make it up on the fly. And things that are just simple that I think oftentimes we as educators don't think about, you know, things like what a page looks like. How many words are on a page? What is the layout look like? Some of those things can really make a big difference for students. Okay, so now we're going to get to the tech part and thinking about where technology can kind of be infused and embedded throughout this process. So thinking about things like portfolios, infographics, using lots of interactive tools. So I'm going to highlight some of my favorites, and I've broken them down by the 3 different UDL networks, though they really cross over all 3. So that's, to me, that's the sweet spot. So let's get started. I have a long list here, but let's also look at some specifics. Well, it says I'm loading. Okay, well, let's keep going. So within the affective network, remember, we're looking for ways to spark interest in students. We're looking for those kids that might feel disengaged from learning. And so you really want to have a bias towards authentic audience. It's got to be something that matters or that is exciting. So Soundtrap is one of my favorite tools. It is web-based, so it will work on Chromebooks, but they also have a mobile app that works on both Android and iOS devices. And what Soundtrap is a tool that allows you to edit audio. So I have worked with students who maybe in the past, their teachers would have them write a paper. Now they're making a podcast. That is more exciting. And they're going to share it. So people are going to actually hear their podcast. Soundtrap is really easy to use. It's got a lot of kind of drag and drop features. They also have templates built in that are designed for podcasts. So my 13-year-old son made a podcast for one of his final projects this year, and started off by like, I don't know how to do this. This isn't going to work. Well, you just take their podcasting template and you can mute their track that has their people talking and just put in your own audio track. It's that simple. Or if you have kids that really get into it, they can create some of their own tracks. There are also built-in tracks. So it's what I call freemium. It is free. There is a premium version. I have not used the premium version. I have found that the free version works really, really great. So this is a solid tool. Consider Soundtrap for a podcasting project. So another tool that I really am a fan of is Adobe Spark. Adobe Spark is also free and also web-based, and it's kind of 3 tools in one. So with Adobe Spark, students can create videos, and again, they're very drag and drop, user-friendly, but really have a very high production value. Built-in audio options. So you can create videos with Adobe Spark. You can also create infographics, and it is optimized for social media graphics. Or if you wanted something printable, students can create that too. And then the third piece that's kind of built into this is called a web story. And so it's basically an interactive web page that is really engaging and interesting to look at. So Adobe Spark is definitely worth checking out and providing as an option for students when you're considering what you would typically do to kind of assess students' understanding or their knowledge. So consider giving them some choice. You can make a video, an infographic, or a web story using Adobe Spark. So they don't need to go all over the internet searching for a tool. They have one right here. Okay, so this is another one of my favorite tools. This is called Great Big Story. And Great Big Story was initially created through kind of an offshoot of CNN. And they have curated short videos, documentaries, really, really high production value. And these are all stories that have a positive bent to them. So a lot of stories of overcoming adversity and a lot of really, really high interest. They're short videos. So for your students who are not going to watch a really, really long video or read a really, really long article, this is perfect. So I just gave a couple of examples. There's a 1.5-minute video on living on the most crowded island on Earth. And after watching that 1.5-minute video, you just want to know more. So really sparking interest in students. And the website is broken down really nicely so that you can search for specific topics if that's what you're looking for, or it could also just be like, I just want examples of heroes in the world. And so there's really, really great content on here. If you've not checked out Great Big Story, I highly recommend that you do that. Another example that I have on here is the person, Unique Jones Gibson, who began the Because of Them We Can movement, and really incredible story of how they are teaching kids about Black excellence and history, and really, really outstanding video piece. So Great Big Story, definitely check that out. Okay, so this is another really, really engaging and crosses over all three of the kind of networks in Universal Design for Learning, and it's called Goose Chase. So Goose Chase is a mobile app. It also has a web interface, but for students to use it, so they need to get the free mobile app. So you can decide, depending on your students and what they have available, how you want to set this up. I have used Goose Chase with teams of students, so really only one person on the team needs the app. And this is an interactive scavenger hunt. So the image that I have here is from our staff back to school day last year on our first day of school. We did this as a professional development activity for staff, but I have also used it with my students. And this is, again, super engaging, really fun. We used it with our entire school last year during we have like a week of wellness. So you create the challenges. So for example, for the week of wellness, it was like, take a picture of a healthy breakfast. Students can respond to the challenges with an image, or they can respond to the challenge with a text post. So you might have them, solve some problem and describe the answer, or you could have them take a picture of it. And then you, as the instructor, get to see all of the images, and you can assign them points. They can see a leaderboard. It gets really, really exciting. And it's fun. And it's one of those things where I think they kind of forget that they're doing a learning activity. And it feels really practical and relevant. So Goose Chase is also freemium. So it has a free version. that just limits the number of people that you can have on each scavenger hunt. There are definitely workarounds to that. You can just duplicate your scavenger hunt and make multiple. We do have an educator license for Goose Chase. We found that it was well worth it. Okay, and then finally in this category, if you are not familiar with Google Keep, I showed this to a group of seniors last spring and like their heads almost exploded because they were like, wait, this has been available to us this whole time and we didn't know it. In a nutshell, Google Keep is digital sticky notes. So you can make lists, and then as you do items, you cross them off your list. But you can also include images, videos, links. So this is my own personal Google Keep. You can see my Costco list there. It's built into the G Suite tools. So if you are at a school that uses Google, then your students already have Google Keep. They probably just don't know it. Another really amazing feature about Google Keep is that within those digital sticky notes, they can add a collaborator. So just like on Google Docs, you can share a note with a parent, you can share a note with a special education teacher or another service provider. So in looking for ways for students to take ownership of their learning and be independent, but yet not be on an isolated island by themselves, we will often have students, okay, make your Google Keep list of your assignments that you need to do for the week, share it with either a parent or a counselor or your special ed case manager, somebody else that can kind of have eyes on it. And this is a lifelong skill. So I use sticky notes in my everyday life. Google Keep is just that, but digital, and it will sync across devices. So it's web-based, but it also has an app. So thinking about that affective network, again, understanding that it's really important for kids to understand the why. And for many students, that's their barrier, is relevance. So looking for ways to make learning relevant and important. Okay, so before I go on to the recognition network, I just want to pause for a quick second and see if there are any questions or issues for me to address.
I think everything's looking good. We're having some activity in the chat of everyone really liking ideas that you're sharing. So thank you for everything so far.
Okay, great.
Lisa, we do have one question actually on our YouTube live stream.
Okay.
Wanting to know more about Goose Chase and how you would use Goose Chase in an online and remote environment, if you have any additional insights on that.
Yeah, so when we did our week of wellness, it was all remote. So what we did was we sent out an email blast to our students saying the week of wellness is coming up. And what's nice about Goose Chase is you can schedule the challenges to come up at certain days and certain times. So we had different challenges appear Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and kids were awarded points for if they did something on each day. And so we gave them instructions for if they want to participate, how to load the app on whatever device of their choice. And instead of doing teams, because it was remote, everyone just participated in the game on their own. So when you're creating the game, you have a choice to make teams or to not make teams and just have everyone participate. So we told students, okay, like take a picture of your physical activity for today or a healthy snack. So that was how they participated. And then we had one of our physical education teachers kind of ran the game and got to see the dashboard. So that worked out really well. Okay, so the recognition network. So this is, remember, talking about how students get their information. And especially in a remote environment, I think that it is really important that our students see us and hear from us on a regular basis. So we had a schedule where we had one synchronous activity per class per week. It was a video call, but beyond that, we didn't have anything required. Now, what's nice about using a tool like Screencastify, there are lots of screencasting tools out there. Screencastify is just one. There's also Screencast-O-Matic. You can also use Google Meet and just record, just not invite anyone and have a Google Meet video call with yourself and record it. So, but I think that it's really, really important that our students see and hear us on a regular basis. And we have to be flexible because we are in a global pandemic. I work with high school kids. Some of my students are now the only ones in their home that have a job. And so I can't say to them, you have to not go to your job because you have to be on my video call. So screencasting is, I really think, so important. And it doesn't take much. So being able to use an extension like Screencastify and show your face and show your screen, even if it's just a quick, good morning, it's going to be a great day. Here's a joke for the day. And then here's the plan for the day. Here are your assignments. I think that our students need to see us and hear us. Unfortunately, when you screencast, we don't get any interaction back, which I know we also crave. But in terms of best practice for our students, being able to provide them more than just text on a screen is going to be really important. What I love also about screencasting is for our students who struggle, it allows them to pause a recording. They can watch it over again. So oftentimes when we were in face-to-face learning, I would say to teachers, have you considered screencasting? Because we have kids that missed information that was just said in the classroom. And a screencast gives them the control to be able to watch it as many times as they need to. And they can kind of save face, right? They don't have to raise their hand and say, can you repeat that? I'm confused, I'm lost. They can watch it over and over again. I'm going to go really fast because I see that we're running out of time, but I co-taught in a science class, and we realized that we were losing so much class time explaining lab setups to our students. And so we said, wait a minute, why don't we just record the lab setup, make that homework, and then the next day answer any questions and then send them to the lab. And of course, there's always one or two kids who, whoops, I didn't watch it. That's okay. They weren't long, go watch it now. But we saved so much class time, and actually then our students were able to get into the lab and do more interaction and less just listening to us. So speaking of screencasting, Edpuzzle is another great tool because what it does is it allows you to put a video into Edpuzzle and you can then embed questions throughout the video. So for example, if I have a YouTube video, a TED Talk that I want my students to watch, but maybe it's on the longer side, over 15 minutes, and I want to make sure that they're actually watching it and understanding it, instead of giving them the link to the video and then a bunch of questions to answer, I can put it in Edpuzzle. The video will play and then it will pause and questions will pop up automatically. If they're multiple choice questions, then Edpuzzle will grade them for you. It also has integration with some of the LMSs. We use Schoology at my school, so there is integration with Schoology. There's also integration with Canvas. It also gives you some data like how long a student spent on a video. And it also has a toggle switch that makes it so students can't forward through the video. They have to watch the whole thing. So that's another great tool. Text Help is a company that makes great accessibility tools. This is Google Read Write. The free version is a screen reader, but it's better than the screen reader that is built into Chromebooks because it's not necessarily designed for people with visual impairments. it's designed more for people who struggle with reading. So it will not read every single word on your screen. It will read where you click or you can highlight. So Read Write for Google is another really great tool. And it will work on anything on the internet. So any website or Google Doc, even PDFs, it will read to students. Okay, and then ThingLink is another great tool. This is an example of a ThingLink that I made when I was co-teaching science a couple of years ago. You take an image and you can create an interactive image. So where there are those circles on the screen, when you're on the ThingLink, if you hover over those circles, then information will pop up, and it could be a video, it could be a website, it could just be text. So imagine having your students learn information kind of on their own at their own pace with an image that is interactive. This is another one that I love. I did not make this, I cannot take credit, but this is a list of all of these women composers, and each one has a link to their YouTube videos of their music. So what a way for kids to be able to explore and learn without necessarily like reading a textbook or listening to a lecture. Okay, so now we're going to go on to hyperdocs, and hyperdocs are both amazing and also super misunderstood, because I think that a lot of teachers think that they've made a hyperdoc if they've made a Google Doc and it has a bunch of links on it. It's actually a very purposefully created lesson plan that is packaged on a Google Doc. So this is a template for creating a hyperdoc. So there is always a piece that has an engaging piece. So there might be an opening intro video. There is always an area for exploration. Students have to have some choice here. So maybe they can click on 3 of the 6 links that you've provided, or maybe they need to click on all of them, but they can choose the order. There's another area where there is an explanation. So there is some kind of quote direct instruction going on. Then there needs to be an area for application, sharing, reflecting. So if you take a look, there are hyperdocs all over the internet, great templates. So thinking about in a remote learning environment, you always have those kids that are like the Sunday dog, right? That are going to zoom, zoom, zoom ahead. And then you have kids that are like Zeus that are going to be able to do a great job, but maybe at a different pace. Consider a hyperdoc as a tool for allowing for that variation, because there can be so many options embedded right within a hyperdoc. Okay, the strategic network. So remember, this is where our students are giving what they know. This is their chance to show us what they've learned. Pear Deck is one of my favorites. It's an extension for Google Slides. And I'm actually going to zoom ahead for a second, because if you use this link, then you can have 3 months of Pear Deck Premium. I believe they opened it up to premium right now for everyone during the pandemic, but it's great to hang on to this code because 3 months is a solid amount of time to be using this tool. And I'll come back to it, but just really quickly. So within Pear Deck, similar to Edpuzzle, where questions and interactive pieces are embedded, Pear Deck allows you to embed interactive slides within a slides presentation. So this also works within PowerPoint. But this is an example of a Pear Deck slide. So you might have a whole lesson on slides that you would normally do face-to-face in the classroom, and you would probably walk the kids through, or your students through, the information. This allows for, so I've used Pear Deck in a face-to-face environment, but in a remote environment, there is a student-paced mode. So you can simply share the link to your slide deck with your students, and the interactive slides are embedded within. And you can see on the dashboard who's on what slide. You can see what they have done, how they've responded. This is another example. There's a little icon down at the bottom, and students drag the dot to how they're feeling. So just imagine, like, it's really hard for us to get formative information as we are in a remote environment. This is one way that you can really get some great information without requiring students to raise their hand on a video call and say, I'm confused. So Pear Deck is a great tool. When you are face-to-face, they also have a great tool that's called Flashcard Factory, where students work together to create images and definitions of words, and then it will create a set of flashcards that your students have created. So here's that link again, just in case you need it. And I know that this will be recorded, so you can always come back and take a look. Okay, so Flipgrid is another great tool. If you have not heard of or seen Flipgrid, you must jump on the Flipgrid bandwagon, especially now in this remote time. So sometimes we need to see and hear our students, and to require them all on a video call at the same time and get real information from them can be really, really challenging. Flipgrid allows students to record video, and it is as simple as clicking on that big green plus button. It is web-based. It also has apps for iOS and Android, and my students prefer to use their phones usually when they're recording. You have so many controls within Flipgrid, so you can set this so that it's just between you and the student and they can't see everyone else. Or you can make this a virtual conversation. So I used this with my class just about a month ago, and I set it so students could comment on each other's posts. I gave them a prompt. It was kind of like a discussion board, but a video discussion board. This image here is from our staff Flipgrid that we set up in November that we call Attitude of Gratitude around Thanksgiving, where people say, kind of what they're thankful for, and it's really fun. So definitely check out Flipgrid. Also, if you want to take Flipgrid to another level, there is something called Grid Pals, and this is where classrooms from around the world can join on a Flipgrid and actually have conversations. I've seen classes where they're reading the same book, or students who maybe are learning a different language will team up with a class in the country that speaks that language natively. So this is another option within Flipgrid. Equatio is another tool that was created by Text Help. They created Google Read Write, and this is designed for math. You can actually speak into your computer microphone and it will write math for you. It is designed for advanced calculations for both math and science. So Equatio is another really great tool. And for kids that are struggling with handwriting or like how the heck you do math on a Chromebook, Equatio is a great option. So sometimes I'll have students create an infographic as an option for how they show me what they know. And Canva is usually my go-to tool. It is free-ish. It's free. There are elements within it that you can pay for, but I've never paid for it before. And the production value is really high. You can also have kids make printable posters or pamphlets or social media posts. So Canva is a great tool for kids to create something that shows their understanding. Okay, so I'm almost near the end. Synth is my latest favorite. Synth is like Flipgrid, but for podcasting. So it allows for 128 seconds of audio. you can give your students a prompt and have them each respond, and then you can stitch together their pieces to make one long podcast that they can all listen to, or they can listen along the way and respond to each other's responses. Again, its user face is so easy, and it is free. Oh, and I promised I would show a picture of my son's cell model that he made out of cake. So, and then took a picture and submitted it. Okay, so remember that offering choices is really important, but I have worked with teachers who've said, oh yeah, I offered them choice. I told them they could make whatever they want. And that doesn't work. So you can't make it just a free for all. So giving students real specific choices and options is going to be really, really important. I am a runner, so I'm always kind of relating these running pieces to my life in education. And I think sometimes we get overwhelmed and we say like, oh, but I'm just trying this one little thing. That is okay. Baby steps, move at your own pace. As long as you are moving, that is what is important. And then finally, one of my passions in the education world is connecting with others. So I'm happy to connect with you on Twitter, or if you would like to send me an email, this is my contact information. And as I promised, this is one more time the link to these slides. Whew.
Great, thank you. We did have a few quick questions.
Okay.
One thing that was brought up by a couple of different people was which apps would you recommend using for primary grades? Would you have any ideas for that?
Yeah, so my experience is with high school students. However, I do work with some students that are operating at a primary level. And I mean, of these tools, Flipgrid, I know kindergarten classes have been using Flipgrid. I have another colleague who teaches first grade and used Flipgrid for show and tell in this kind of virtual environment. Also, Pear Deck is great because you can use a lot of drag and drop and you can embed audio. So if you have students that are not yet readers, that is another really good tool to use with the little ones.
Great. I think another question was just like maybe the pacing of how you're presenting using these different tools. You know, have you introduced them all kind of in the beginning of the year? You introduce them as you go along?
Yeah, it's tricky because we don't want to throw a ton of new technology all at once. So I will generally pick one tool and I will introduce it in a very low risk way. So for example, I used Flipgrid back in the fall when we were at school. And for the first time, I just said, this is just between you and me. The rest of the class isn't going to see your video, but just tell me, what are your hobbies? So I took out the element of, is this an assessment? Am I going to get it right? So I generally follow that same format for most of these tools. And I will kind of roll them out like one by one. Although thinking about if we are remote in the fall and I'll have a new group of students, I will probably pick like my top 3 that I'm going to use over and over and over again. And I'll roll those out together. But again, I'll start off in a very low risk way. So just try this out, see if it works, see how it works. I want to make sure we get like the troubleshooting out of the way without any stress. So I'll say to students, you know, if it's not working for you, don't worry about it. No problem. Like this is not going in the grade book, but let me know so we can kind of work together and troubleshoot.
Great. Okay. I know we have a few more kind of processing questions, but I would invite those people to attend our after debrief session, and we can kind of talk about those things there as well. Also, people who had questions to dive in deeper on Pear Deck, we do have a Pear Deck session webinar coming up. I believe it's this coming Wednesday, June 24th. You can check our website and you can sign up for that. And again, as these are all recorded, if you can't make a time, just go ahead and sign up anyhow, and you'll be able to view the recordings after. So Lisa, I wanted to really thank you. This was great. I think you presented at a really nice pace that we were able to kind of really understand and see your concrete examples. And I love the Sundays and Zeus examples, the Sundays and the Zeuses in your classes. I think I'll take that forward with me. I'd like to thank everybody who has participated in attending today. Let you know you can attend the debrief session if you'd like to chat more. Please fill out the feedback form you're going to receive. And also know that you can share our webinar K-12 Online Academy link for other people to sign up as well. And everything will be available, and Lisa's information will all be sent to you as well. So Lisa, thank you so much. Good luck with your summer and your planning for fall. I think we all need good luck with that. But you know, you gave us some good ideas.
Thanks so much for having me. This has been great. And if there are questions that pop up later, I'm happy to respond.
Great, thank you. And then just a reminder, if you're attending the debrief session, that'll start in a few minutes. We just need to transition over. So thanks for attending, everybody. Have a great day.